Did you ever have a thing?
I tried once to grow my hair out, and
Right.
my hair is so thick it was looking like a satellite dish.
Yeah.
And I was going, I don't think I'm going to stick with that. So this is as long as it ever gets now, because it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
My oldest son grew his hair down So first of all, he's like 6'3", and
long flowing hair.
He's tall and skinny and got long flowing hair, and it was all wavy, just like the way I always imagined mine would be if I ever managed to get it that far out.
6'1"?
Just right at 6.
6. Yeah, I'm 5'8".
I used to try to claim 6'1", but
no.
Really.
Yeah, you can round up if you want, but
right. So I was wearing boots, cowboy boots, and I'm like everybody else. Like it's been a year since we've dressed up.
Right.
Right. So I'm on my heels.
Slippers.
I can't stand up straight.
That's so funny.
But we had a great time. And welcome to Education is Painful, the podcast where you will learn. This is a Toro Strategic Production, part of the Engine Media Group, in association with Hearst Digital Media. Okay.
All right.
So my guest today is an Olympian, Hall of Fame speaker, best-selling author of, I believe, 7 books.
Soon to be 8.
Soon to be 8, yeah. Deep thinker, teacher, Vince Poscente.
Jonas, good to be with you.
Good to be with you. So let's just dive right into that book business. Bunch of good books. Ant and the Elephant, I think, was a big one. A lot of people really maybe identified with that. I enjoyed it, and had the honor and privilege of being one of your test readers on the new one.
Right.
Do you what do you want to? And I would also like to point out for the people listening, the Age of Speed, which I would say is highly underrated for what it is. It's a great book. And now the new book is called The Earthquake.
Right.
Where does that leave us? Where do we start with that one?
Well, just to give a bit of backstory on the ant and the elephant, when you get into the book writing world, you start to go, what's the concept? What's going to stand up? Because there's a ton of books out there that people do that it's just another book. Anybody could write a book now, it seems. So I would say it's
kind of like anybody can do a podcast now. Obviously.
It's so unique. But but to have a standout book or a standout podcast is really the goal. And these concepts will come to you, whether it's in the shower or you're getting on an elevator or something, you start to realize, wait, this is a concept I could follow, whether it's fiction or nonfiction.
Right.
And I heard a speaker, Dr. Lee Poulos, say that in a second of time, your conscious mind processes with 2,000 neurons, while the subconscious mind is processing with 4 billion neurons. Right? So the ratio of the conscious and subconscious mind, as he said it, was if you took a golf ball and you put it on at the time, he said the Houston Astrodome, the golf ball would be the conscious mind, and the stadium would be the subconscious mind. And then it occurred to me as I was starting to speak after my Olympic experience and realizing that the mental training was such an important part of the Olympic outcomes that I had, that if I made this ratio, this study, my own, and I said, well, what if you put an ant on the back of an elephant, right? And then
instead of a golf ball in the Astrodome.
Right. Well,
a little harder to write a book about.
Yeah, he's more of a scientist, so he didn't. I was able to kind of take that idea and make it better. And what if an ant is on the back of the elephant making decisions on direction, right? What if the ant doesn't even know he's on the back of an elephant? What if the ant thinks, I'm going west, starts marching west, ends up east because that's where the elephant is going, and then going, well, how do I end up here? And then he starts to realize how he's A, on the back of an elephant, and B, how do I engage my subconscious mind, my elephant, to go in the same direction?
Yeah. And I had never thought about it that way before, obviously, which is why you write the book. But that's such a powerful image of this tiny little thing that thinks it's in charge,
Right.
and you've got some flexibility there. Like an ant on an elephant's got a fair degree of freedom,
Right.
within what is actually a very small constrained area.
Right.
Right. So you're talking about when we think that we're making a decision, how much of that decision has already been made for us by our...
That's the head scratcher of the human
Right.
experience, right?
Right.
How did I end up here again? Think about relationships.
Yeah, again, I think is a big,
Right.
pretty important
How
part
did I
of
end
it.
up here? How did I end
Again.
up finance? How did I end
Yeah.
up here with relationships? How did I end up?
Been there.
Yeah. And when you start to think about, well, what if you had an alignment between 2,000 neurons and 4 billion neurons every second? What if 4 billion neurons were completely aligned with your conscious intention? That then it gets really interesting because, and in a way, it might be convenient, but that's how I explain my recreational skier to Olympics in 4 years. Like at 26 years old, never ski raced before.
Right.
4 years later, vying for the gold medal in the Olympic Winter Games in speed skiing. And how do you explain that? How do you explain to get that far that fast?
Right.
And so, in part of it, a significant portion of the program that I used, that I did through research and reading books and all that, was what mental training strategies can you establish? Because there's a fact, you'll gravitate to that which you believe to be true. So why not be the architect of that truth, right?
Right.
And when you say that, it's a very easy thing to say,
Right.
but how? How do you establish a truth in your mind? And if you look at the ant and the elephant, how do you establish not a truth in the ant on the back of the elephant? How do you have the subconscious mind establish that truth? So that's really what the book ended up being. And in answer to your question, how did the earthquake come around? So the book did really well. The Ant and the Elephant, LeBron James quoted it in Sports Illustrated. FedEx used it as a leadership strategy tool in courses that they did on their own accord, DuPont. So this book's doing well. And then, my wife Michelle, her and I went through a financial, nether regions kick. It was like, ouch, in 2008, which most people did.
Yeah.
That happened to coincide with two very big bets that I made financially in the millions in two different categories. Like I was really just balls out just saying, hey, I'm going to figure out how to do this. And so got hurt extra bad.
Yeah.
And I was shocked at how difficult it was to recover from a personal earthquake, financial earthquake in this case. And what got you here is not necessarily going to get you there as a cliche.
And so an earthquake, just to hold on to that for just a second or two.
Yeah.
An earthquake isn't necessarily, obviously, an actual earthquake, although it could be. But it's some sort of...
It's a metaphor.
Massive,
Devastation.
life-shaking, devastating event.
Yeah, your entire world
that was
changed.
not necessarily predictable.
Exactly. You didn't see it coming, and
Didn't necessarily do anything wrong to deserve it. Just life happens.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then you think, well, I got willpower. I got
Sure. Yeah.
I have self-determination.
Right.
I can figure out how to do. I've been through other setbacks before, but in an earthquake, a metaphorical personal earthquake, you're dealing with a new set of circumstances that are going to test your resolve, your resilience. And the simple advice would be to let go and you'll figure it out. But what if you're stuck?
Right.
What if you can't get out of this earthquake after the earthquake? So
a more technical term for that would be like rumination, or you get into a cycle of I can do this, and you are so locked in on one, this is the only way that this could possibly work, that you keep getting into this cycle of try, fail, but you're constantly trying the exact same thing.
Right. That's it. And so then I got the concept. So this is a long way to answer your question, but how do you come up with end up with a book? Well, you come up with a concept. Then you've got to write something that's unique. You've got to write something that has the reader go, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way, right? Because there's nothing new under the sun.
Well, I already said that once.
Right, yeah, you did?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the podcast, there's nothing new. It's another podcast.
Right.
But what makes it unique? What's your angle? What's the concept? And how can you bring that to life? And so the book, The Earthquake, and I don't know if you do post-production, but you can put up a picture of this. But it's,
we'll do that.
Yeah, you can do it. So the book is...
I've never done it before, but we can try it.
Well, there you go. So anyway, the concept of the book took about 5 years to flesh out in terms of the formula that would work. How do you get out of an earthquake? And what is a universal way to get out of any kind of personal earthquake? And in the book, it ends up...
Which first requires you having to get out of your earthquake.
Exactly. I had to figure it out for me. And it took years, right? It took years to start to figure out, well, what is going on here? I got to the Olympics, New York Times, the Speaker Hall of Fame. I mean, I've got all these, things that I've accomplished, climbing mountains in the Himalayas, and nothing that I knew was going to work to get out of this earthquake.
Right.
And that was immensely frustrating. You're a reasonably intelligent individual. You've got a handle on how to accomplish a goal, and nothing you were doing was working, or I was doing. And then I started to pull it together in terms of what I called the solution loop, which is basically, it's collaboration, curiosity, and creativity, right? Collaborating with your conscious and subconscious mind, not trying to force things into happening, or not trying to do it the conscious way or the subconscious way. It's, in the book, without getting into too much detail, it's really a third reality. It's being able to have your subconscious mind letting go of what it knows, which is a real challenge, and your conscious mind to let go, which is another challenge because we have bias that are fixed in stone in some cases.
Yeah, there's however many pages of different biases that there are. Right. And they're hardwired in. Like that's not something that you just say, oh yeah, I know about the sunk cost fallacy.
Well, that's a good way to word it, hardwired, because you really got to almost de-wire the notions that you have or what you feel is an unnegotiable, non-negotiable path. Yeah. So this collaboration, then it kicks into curiosity, which is being curious about, well, what are the possibilities? And there's unlimited possibilities. And then being creative to narrow it down with something, and then does this work? And if it doesn't work, then try something else. You go through that loop again. Does this work? Does this work? Does this work? So, and the ant and the elephant was a parable. Right. And so it brings it to life. It brings the concept to life, and it's got some tongue-in-cheek humor. And then the earthquake is the same thing. We pick up where the ant and the elephant are enjoying the oasis that they earned. They built a business there, and then there's an earthquake. Their entire life crumbles. They have to leave, and then it gets interesting. Right. So, and what I wanted to do, and you were an early reader, so that was maybe the first question I asked you, does the story hold water? Does the story stand alone without the prescriptive stuff in the background? So,
and I think one of the things that resonates about the story as a story that also highlights one of the points that you make there is that look, this hit the ant, I forget the ant's name.
A deer,
the ant. He's done everything right. Like he's where he wanted to be. He's where he needed to be, and then this earthquake happens and just literally takes his feet out from under him. And that's something that when you talk to somebody about that in psychological terms. Yeah. I understand that's what happened, but when you put it in the form of a story of this, almost too cute little ant, that you can really identify. Oh, that's what you mean. It's when the earthquake comes and you had no control over it, no choice in the matter, nothing you could have done to avoid it. And now you're in this, you can feel that sort of panic response much more clearly than when somebody's just describing, when bad things happen, you may have this panic response.
Yes, yes. Maya Kazazic, she was a fantastic speaker. Extraordinary story of the Bosnian genocide. As a teenager, had her legs blown off. I mean, she's fast forward to today, she's a successful entrepreneur. But she said, I've got drive, I've got willpower, I can get through it. She went through amputation without anesthesia. Okay, so this is a hardcore person. And but she went through periods of shock when she had some setbacks in her life, and she said, I couldn't figure it out because I was incapacitated. I've got willpower, I've got drive. And a friend of hers, who's a psychiatrist, I believe, said it's like this. It's like when somebody tries to steal your purse, you fight.
Right.
And so you have that drive and determination in the fight, which she has. It's after that you can go into shock, that we are fragile.
Right.
I mean, fairly recently, we just, as we're taping this, Simone Biles is in the Olympic Games and withdrew halfway through the women's team competition, right? And everybody's going, what's wrong? Is it too much pressure? Is it all this? And it's just from an athlete's perspective, she knew she would be a deficit to the team, right? And it's going to play out, and people are going to learn that it wasn't anything. Maybe there is pressure, and she's saying the pressure was getting to her, but she knew when to draw back. She knew how to be able to do this.
Well, I think that one, you need to. I didn't even realize there was a team competition.
No.
This was a team competition.
Yeah.
Where, like you say,
Collective points,
her performance would have been a detrimental impact to the rest of the team.
And her future events that she was stepping
events,
into. She didn't want it. She just went, you know what? I'm not in it today, and it's not going to happen today. This is my third Olympics or whatever. I don't know. Enough.
Right.
And she's got the wherewithal to say, and the tennis player, Osaka, right? Mm-hmm. The media getting all their undershorts in a twist because she didn't want to do a media interview. Right. The media got their feelings hurt because they weren't having their way. It's like, come on. I mean, these athletes are human,
right? And
we're human. And when we experience an earthquake, you can go into shock, and you can be stuck, to your point, and you can be incapacitated, and scratch your head and go, what is going on? Why do I not want to get out of the covers? And then the whole mental health issue of depression and all that, and
right.
And at the very worst, suicidal thoughts. I mean, there's a insidious kind of path that can happen from being stuck.
Right.
And so that's why I wrote the book, is the earthquake, is to make sure that somebody holding it and reading it has a path that is predicated on hope. And how to make that happen and occur was really why I wrote it.
Yeah, I found I have seen, and I was in the military. I've seen a lot of things. Post-traumatic stress is a big issue with veterans, and that's sort of a catch-all term for a lot of different responses. Some of which are very obvious,
right,
and some of which are very on the inside. And one of the things you realize is that people, not always, but a lot of times, people get into this cycle of feeling that there's no hope, feeling like that well, I keep trying to do this and it doesn't work, and if I try to do that, it's also not going to work, and if I try to do that, it's not going to work, and if I what's the point if nothing's going to work? I've been there. I mean, I've experienced it. Mm-hmm. It's a very literally a hopeless position to be in, and that's one of the worst feelings as when you start feeling like that your agency is not only constrained by as if you were a prisoner, but when your agency, your ability to take action positively, is constrained by circumstances that you have zero control over, that it's completely has been taken away. That's tough.
Yeah, you said a key word, which was hopeless. You know, and if you really kind of break down that word, the inference is that you have no hope.
Right.
Well, it says hopeless. You have less hope. That's all it takes. You know, to have less hope means, wait a minute. And then the brain insidiously starts to get in this vortex of auguring into the ground of well, this is worse, and this happened. What about this? And
right. And one of the things that is brought out, not necessarily in the way we're talking about this at this moment, but that you definitely see that spiral into where, you know, a deer, the ant, and is cutting off his own, his own escape avenues or whatever,
right.
what have you, by going into that cycle of
right.
Yeah, that's not gonna work.
And a theme that happened. It's so interesting writing a book. If you ever get a chance to do it, I highly recommend it, because it's just it's a journey of self-discovery, and it's a chance for us men to.
It's a lot of work.
Well, it's a chance for us men to give birth for once.
Right, true.
Because it's just such a process.
Yeah.
And a theme that came out of this is how stubbornness, you know, what is stubbornness? Well, it's a fixation that I know the right way to do this. I know the right way to do this. I know the right way to do this. Look at social media.
Right.
I mean, there's a billion people plus 7 billion on the planet, more or less, who are stubborn. Like, I know the answer.
Right.
Here's my opinion, which happens to be the truth.
Right.
You know? Wow.
It's capital T truth, because that's so.
Yeah. So there is all sorts of evidence that the human condition is one where we default to, I'm right, you know?
Right.
And so that really can speak to a lot of
One of the most liberating things you can do as a person is realize you're not always going to be right, and then learn to enjoy that.
Enjoy not being right?
Yeah.
Or enjoy just letting go of being right?
I think step one is learn to let go.
Step one.
You kind of have to do that first.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But then, you know, even sometimes being wrong can hurt. Maybe just hurt. Hopefully, just hurt your feelings. But
right.
But if you can let go of that, you know, need to be capital R, capital T truth, capital R right, and be okay with being corrected so that you can be correct.
Yeah.
It makes life so much easier.
I'm not
and
sure.
You learn stuff.
Yeah, I'm not sure we talked about this, before. There's a documentary called Beyond the Curve. Mm-hmm. Did I bring that up earlier?
Don't. Think
anyway,
so,
I'll bring it up for this. It's a documentary about people who believe that the Earth is flat.
Yeah.
They're called flat earthers, right? So the documentary could easily make fun of these people, right? And if you're a flat earther, it doesn't do that. It says, tell me how you think. Like, what makes you think that the Earth is flat? And then they profile these individuals. What's fascinating about this documentary is they delve into ultimately the human condition, which is what gets us to the point where we can't let go of thinking we're right? And so what they do effectively is alienate their family and friends who go, you're crazy, you don't know what you're talking about. And they gravitate online to people who think this is the way they do. And then it's this, I don't know if the term is self-immolation, but this ability to be able to take anecdotal evidence and a piece of information and insert it into, and then line up anecdotal evidence and say, see, here are the facts. And so then they go, it's proof right there.
Right.
And what effectively happens at the end of the documentary is they realize that they can't get out.
Right.
They can't admit that they were wrong. They can't go back to their family in their minds and say, you know what, I messed up.
Yeah.
They they meet at a conference in this documentary, and they're with like-minded people, and you could see the relief on their face that they're with people who believe what they believe.
Yep.
So now we're all right. and this human condition of just being stubborn and trying to stay.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, maybe one day before we kick the bucket, we figure this out. But me too. I wrote the book, The Earthquake, because I went, I got to figure this out, right?
Yeah.
And it took years to really come to a solution. I'm so excited that people, especially people that are in the state of hopelessness,
Right.
that have that hopeless feeling or lack hope, that it has impact on what they're
Right.
journeying through. Because and it's fun. It's meant to be fun. I don't know. I think we've been all that funny so far in this podcast, but the idea is to just have fun with it.
Yeah, and I don't always recommend that sort of book, but I feel pretty good about recommending that one. It's a good one.
Yeah.
And not just because I had a tiny little sliver of a early taste of it.
Right.
No, I really do think that was a good take on that.
I was nervous about giving you the book because I know how analytical you are, and I also know how you come at things from just a different angle. And but I was, it was kind of too late anyway. The book was going to come out, but I did value your insight, so appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't normally think about myself as having a different viewpoint on things, but I've had to learn, working with media, and as I've transitioned over the years into more and more sales and leadership and different things where I have to take other people's viewpoints into account more. That not everybody looks at things the way I do.
No, you're
and finding common ground, finding you said parables. I would have said analogies, but parables is a great way to look at it. Stories, in other words,
very sticky,
are very, very sticky, and a lot of times people find it much easier to understand what you're trying to get across to them if you tell them the story.
Well, what was interesting to write a parable about a personal earthquake that coincidentally overlapped with kind of the hero's journey, where they set out, and there are villains. There are people when you're down that try to kick you. It's absolutely shocking that there are people that will come after you. Vultures. There's vultures, by not coincidence in the book, that really circle overhead and say, "Oh, good, we got fresh meat here."
I think Phil Varg is a personal protection specialist. So there are people who will kill the F out of you just for no reason. And that's true. There are people who are just, at least from your perspective, that are just out to get you. Yeah. Not a lot, much fewer than what we usually think there are. Yeah. But they're out there.
We experienced that. We went through part of that financial devastation, and it's the aftershocks that get you. And we had close friends that turned on us, and it was absolutely amazing that. And they did it not to be malicious, not that they weren't our friends, that they were hurt. Right. They were feeling in their mind that they were right, and then how dare you have a problem? Right. How dare you have some inconsistencies with Yeah,
well,
I don't know. It's I mean, and then when you realize that, you go, oh, good, okay, you get to be over there from now on, right? Because and I guess they're happy to be right about who you are. Going through your own personal financial earthquake. I mean, it really was disappointing.
I think you hit on one of I guess what you might call the petty evils that people do. That people, I'm going to include even myself in this, that we like to put people in a box and say, oh, you're that kind of person. And once you're in that box, nobody wants to let you out. Nobody wants to ever say, "Oh, I was wrong about you." I've seen this happen over and over again where people, will say, "Oh, that guy, he's on drugs," and forever, no matter what, he may have gotten like arrested once for something really trivial, but for the rest of his life, like if that happens when you're say 20, well, you got 40 to 60 more years of life, and he's that guy for the rest of his life.
Or think of the twist on that. Sorry to interrupt, but I got to sneak this in here. Think of Bill Cosby, right?
Yeah.
Or Woody Allen, right? Revered
Right.
individuals in that space of entertainment. And when the truth comes to light that doesn't match the what reality is,
Right.
in a person's mind, there is it's a fascinating disconnect. It's almost like watching somebody short circuit, when they start to realize, wait, Bill Cosby, and so, and some won't let go of it, right? And some will, and then they flip to the other side. Oh, he must be evil. Well,
Right.
I'm not saying he's not. I'm saying
I don't know him, so
yeah. Then walked in his shoes.
Right.
There's some pretty damning evidence, and he's running around right now. Right. So I don't know.
As opposed to Harvey Weinstein, who everybody just was.
Yeah, they were ready to
pretty obvious.
Yeah. What a piece of work. Well, anyway, yeah. He had power. It was that's different when there's the disconnect. It was like finally, it caught up to him.
Well, I think everybody, not everybody, but everybody who paid attention there kind of knew he was a manipulator. Like they may not have known everything he was up to, but he's been manipulating the system and taking advantage of people and things in other ways. So that was,
and justified it in his own mind, right?
Absolutely, and that's the other thing is how many times do people sit back and at the end of the day and go, man, I was such a bad person today. I did all these things just to be mean.
If somebody can justify murder, if somebody can justify pedophilia, then and if we have the arrogance to think that's them, right? The human condition is capable of justifying anything, and so we can learn from people's mistakes. We can learn from what doesn't work. I was with I won't say his name. He was a household name in the motivational speaking world, and completely revered by everyone. And I spent time with this person for weeks on end, and saw the dark side. And was at one point I was in a circle of celebrity people. We were all speaking at the same kind of conference, and this person I'm talking about basically did a verbal assault in front of everybody. And one of the other celebrities stepped in and said, "Why would you say that? Like, why would you say that to him, to his face?" Because he was not afraid, Anyway, people are capable of doing things, and we can learn from that and say, "Oh, wait, if I'm capable of this, of rationalizing anything, then how can I not rationalize everything, right? How can I be a person that's more proactive?" It's almost like active listening in a mirror,
Yeah, right. That's exactly what it is. I think.
Yeah.
It's that same manner of paying attention to what someone else is saying and doing, which is vastly more important.
Right.
But applying that to yourself,
right?
Like from the outside, which gets back to the conscious, subconscious.
It really does,
but if you're looking at yourself from the outside as if you were watching another person, there are things about yourself that you start seeing that are a lot of times they're kind of uncomfortable.
Yeah,
it's kind of like when you doing podcasts and stuff, hearing your own voice and that's what I sound like. Other people listen to me when I talk and that sounds like that. Oh, it's so awful. But when you look at yourself objectively from, just take an objective look at your actions aside from your own, justifications and excuses for why you do things or why you act certain ways, it can be uncomfortable. It can give you that cringy.
Well, I'll put it this way. If in your life, the biggest lessons you've ever had are when you're uncomfortable.
Right.
So
100%.
seek the discomfort. I mean, if it's uncomfortable, go towards it. When you run towards discomfort, it gets smaller. When you run away from discomfort, it gets bigger.
Yeah.
So you choose.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, especially if it's things that need to be done. Like if you know something needs to be done, but it's uncomfortable. There's things. I mean, honestly, reaching out to you for this show and other people it's very uncomfortable to me.
Really?
Yeah, it really is. Because like I know I'm imposing on your time. I know how I feel when I enjoy it very much, but I know that
it's an ask.
There's always it's an ask.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like this is never going to happen if I don't do this.
Right.
And I get up in the morning and run. Or here lately, I've been doing a little bit of bicycling to let my feet recover. But that's not comfortable.
No.
But I know if I don't do it, it's going to be so much worse later.
Yeah.
Not least because at 50 years old, it's all kind of downhill.
Oh, it's precipitous. Yes. I'll be 60 in a few months, and it's just, it's so interesting getting older. It's so interesting because you just, the mind is still in that state of, I'm going to live forever. And then you're thinking, wait a minute, that mirror is telling me exactly the opposite.
Right. Which, speaking of uncomfortable truth, that's a struggle sometimes. And so, all right, well, let's take a detour from that for a moment. Are you still working with Radical Safety?
All right, so no, yes and no. I mean, I had this idea, which an entrepreneur does.
Right.
He sees a hole in the marketplace, and in the safety landscape, there is how long of an answer do you want here? Because so the safety industry is run by engineers and PhDs, okay? And they are both in the left hemisphere category. Right. Very logically driven, practical oriented, doesn't make sense. Where's the list? Give me the checklist. And so what I noticed in the safety landscape is there's a lot of focus on behavioral change. If people behave differently, they will be more safe.
Right.
And so that's perfectly logical, right?
Sure.
And so they put up a sign or they put on a safety workshop. And in both cases, it's an assumption that people will register something logically to be able to change their behavior.
Yeah.
People change their behavior when they have an emotional connection to it, okay? So that's why a devastating setback, an explosion, somebody losing their life has an emotional quotient to it, and they go, oh, we need to readdress our safety. Let's put on more workshops and put on more signs, right? Thinking that that's what affected the change. So here is this Olympic athlete who's looking at the safety landscape, who has an expertise in peak performance, who has an expertise in raising the game of sales audiences and leadership audiences, writing books on that topic. And I'm looking at the safety world going, what if an athlete had as their standard, I'm going to change my behavior in this race or in this competition. That's the basic. That's the starting level. For an athlete, it's how do I have peak performance? How do I perform at the highest level?
Right.
And so the question is, how do you get that? And it's the same thing. It's the emotional quotient. It's having an emotional buzz around what would it feel like to march in the opening ceremonies? What would it feel like to hold up the Stanley Cup? What would it feel like to be able to come to your dad who's getting on in years and saying, Dad, here's my Super Bowl ring and I want to give it to you. Something that has an emotional quotient attached to it. That's when you affect sustained change. Right. And so I looked in the dictionary under the word conventional, and I looked for the antonym to conventional, because there was conventional safety.
Right.
The antonym to conventional is radical. So, engineers, PhDs.
Specialists.
Very much specialists. Also, always right.
My brother being a civil engineer.
Yeah. Oh my God. So here's this Olympic guy who wore a pink rubber suit, jumping around on chairs, saying, "Hey, it's about radical safety," and I couldn't have a more universal, huh? You know.
Yeah.
And it's not that they don't get it. It's not that they're
Yeah.
not intelligent. It's not that they don't. We even talk about the psychology of safety and all that.
Right.
Oh yeah. No. I've got a PhD in the psychology of safety. I know. I put up a sign. I have a checklist. I have all these practical
Right.
things. And if I'm hurting your feelings, it's because you think you're right. And the point is that to have an additional voice,
Yeah.
right? It's not me taking over the safety world. It's me augmenting how they can have the emotional
Right.
quotient added to all the cadre
Right.
of tools and techniques and approaches. And so I've been hitting my head against the wall for 3 years in an industry that's $1 trillion industry that could use this kind of messaging. And I got better things to do if I can't get the buyer's attention, right?
Right.
So yes, I've been giving safety
Yeah.
speeches. I'm still giving free speeches at safety conferences. And I'll continue to kind of beat the drum.
Right.
And I think I hurt engineers and PhDs' feelings, or people that are in the control who've been putting these courses on. And so I'll always be convinced that performance supersedes behavior, right? Yes, behavior is the base level, but what if people were performing at the highest level, as if they're athletes,
Right.
you know, in any safety setting? And so, so that's
But
your answer.
How
Radical
different
safety.
would the world look? Because there's just so many people who are content to get by, to do the minimum
I don't think
for
they're-
whatever reason.
Yeah, I don't think the people I've met in the safety world are so committed and are so passionate about that they are there to save lives,
Right.
to have zero
so
incident.
I'm more thinking about the guy on
In the field.
assembly line, the
Yeah.
guy that's on a, I'm not even going to say lineman on electric, because those guys are pretty hardcore.
Yeah. So somebody just wanting to get by. Let's talk about somebody on an assembly line, right?
Right.
So the optics of that is that's a person that's given up. They're just going to get a paycheck, go home, right? They have no motivation, they have no drive, they have no determination.
Right.
But if you step back and go, okay, everybody is driven by emotion,
Right.
all right? So that person is providing for their family. And they're going to suck it up and do a shitty job in order to provide for
Right.
their family. They've got that passionate drive. So if they attached safety to getting home to their family, to being able to provide for their family, that's when things change.
Right.
And so I hear what you're saying, and I also know that everybody has the capacity to draw from that emotional quotient, right? And so
Yeah, I wonder how many of those, circling back to a previous topic, I wonder how many of those people just feel hopeless, at least in that area of their lives. Like they may be happy elsewhere, but just feel like, well, this is it. This is what I do.
yeah,
This is all I can do.
yeah, we're all capable of that too.
Yeah.
And they may feel stuck. They're in a personal earthquake, right?
Right.
And they've lost the drive to get unstuck, which is part of the earthquake again, because that happens, right? There's a part of the book, remember the mud flats, right? Oh man, it's miles of this mud flats and trying to get across it,
Right.
and no matter of innovations get you through that, other than one step at an
Right.
uncomfortable step after the other, which can get you to the other side. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
And sometimes when we're exhausted, we give up.
Yeah.
We move on.
These conversations, like I would do these just for the conversations, but it's an excuse for me to have conversations with people about interesting topics.
Right.
But the slog to get here, it's I talked with Sia Yassatornarat last week about how much effort goes into getting to this point. And this and other things where your Olympic career, the glory is when you're flying through the air at, leaving the ramp at 120 miles an hour or however fast it is. And that's the amazing, and it's thrilling, and it's wonderful. But nobody sees how much effort goes into falling and having to find a suit, and the only one you can find is pink, and and all the anguish and the pain and the stress and the things that you have to do to get to that point.
Yeah.
And being able to look at that effort and the slog and say, yeah, it's worth it. I'm going to get there.
You just sparked a flashback. I was on the platform with a 5-time swimming medalist for the U.S.
Okay.
I cannot remember his name. And we were debriefing our Olympic experience. Now, mine was different because I was in one Olympics. I didn't dedicate my entire life. It was a 4-year journey to get to the Olympics. I placed 15th, so I did not win. He'd taken home 5 medals. And by the end of our conversation, we both had an epiphany that we had the same Olympic experience, right? He had 5 medals, gold, some or all of them, I can't remember. And I had none.
Right.
And to your point, it was what it took to get there.
Right.
I don't know, let's explore that for a second, because what is that? What it took to get there was the human experience of being able to get through the struggle, to get through the uncertainty, to be able to actually be bigger than fear. I know that's my thing. If I'm bigger than fear, if I'm better than fear, if I can put fear in its place, I don't know of a better feeling, because I don't want to be controlled by fear. And maybe that's it, but I think
recognizing and owning the fear as sometimes there's a legitimate reason.
All right.
But it's usually not as big as you think it is.
Right.
And even some of the worst case scenarios aren't necessarily as bad as you play them up to be in your mind.
Right.
Just think about downhill skiing off of a ramp. I can see that being a bit of a terrifying prospect the first time you contemplate.
Well,
now, I didn't grow up skiing.
Well, okay. So. Let me kind of clarify. I need to paint a picture in your mind. So, speed skiing, number one, was a demonstration sport in Albertville.
Okay.
Back up until Barcelona Olympics, they had demonstration sports.
Okay.
Now, as you can see in the Olympic Games, they've introduced skateboarding, surfing, breakdancing is coming next in Paris. And so obviously they're trying to get eyeballs. They're trying to, so that's how sports get in. But back then, demonstration sports, speed skiing. All the other ski disciplines have a timing light at the top and bottom. And speed skiing has both timing lights at the bottom in a speed trap.
Okay.
And the speed trap is 100 meters long. So picture a football field.
Yep.
The fastest person through that football field distance, cross one beam, cross the second beam, is the winner. We start at the halfway point, and it's straight down. So you're never leaving the snow. And
Gotcha.
And so the Olympic track, for example, in Les Arcs, was 2/3 of a mile long.
Right.
So we started at the halfway point, and with a field in the Olympics, it was 89 competitors. Mm-hmm. And then there's qualification rounds. The slowest 20 get lopped off, then you move up the mountain. You move up the mountain each qualification round. Therefore, you're going faster and faster.
Right.
And in speed skiing with the Darth Vader style helmet and the skin-tight rubber suit and locking into this kind of position of a teardrop shape, you're just in a tight tuck. As you're picking up speed, you're 0 to 60 miles an hour in 3 seconds.
Right.
That Porsche outside does it in 4 seconds. Right. You go up to 125 miles an hour at 8 seconds. And while this chaos is happening around you, the skis are just we call it riding a flat ski. It's very fast. So if you're on a flat ski, the skis start to swim. You know, they like that. Well, you know what happens when you catch an inside edge or an outside edge? You're going down if you catch an outside edge, boom, you go down fast. The expression I use is, if you know the expression "uh-oh." In speed skiing, it's up, and then you're down. And then the inside edge crash is where you catch an inside edge, it spins the body, the ski pops off. Now you're on one ski, and then you go down. In either case, riding a flat ski is fast, but susceptible to catching an edge. If you go up on the rails or the inside edge of the skis, it's more stable, but you don't go as fast. So this mental toughness comes into play.
Sticking it out on the flat ski.
And mental toughness is, if you think about it, it's overcoming the instinct to flinch, right?
Absolutely.
Think about this for a second. How do you overcome instinct?
You just have to keep doing it.
Yeah. But if I were to take a balloon and throw it or a beach ball and throw it at your face, you were blinking without me even having a beach ball. How do you not blink, right?
I'm resisting their urge to defend.
The military's coming back. But the conditioning. But yeah, how do you not have instinct? How do you not flinch?
Right.
And so...
and how do you know when is the right time to not flinch?
Yeah, well...
I mean, that's part of the training.
It's part of the training. The guy that won, you know, he had ice in his veins. He was just... But he hit the same bump I hit, and I thought I was going to die, you know, and he just went boom, like that, and I went, wow. Well, the guy that won the gold medal definitely was not flinchable, you know, so, yeah.
When you do a sport or even learn a lot about a particular subject, it's amazing how much you notice that most people just blow right past. You never.
Yeah.
I took a course in plants, but trees actually.
Oh, yeah.
Dendrology course in college. One of the times that I went. And the professor said, you know, by the end of this class, you're going to have to be really careful driving, because you're going to be driving past trees and say, "Oh, I know what that one is. Oh, I know what that one is." And he's right. He was right. Like and I still, you know, kind of keep it, especially traveling, when I see how, you know, I don't recognize them by species, of course, but when I see different types of trees and things, and that's just one thing.
Just one thing, yeah. Yeah,
but noticing, I would have never noticed, you know, that there's this microscopic bump that this guy's...
We've got this musician staying with us temporarily. He's one of the top violinists in the world. He's from France. Our son's a musician, and so by virtue of just being who we are and empty nesters, we've got this guest. He's a significant force in the violin world.
Right.
And we were eating dinner, and there was a song playing in the background, and in the background of that there was a string section, and he says, "Oh, I love what the strings are doing there."
Yeah.
And you know what? And I'm going, "French fries." I like the French fries. You know, so he was so tuned in because of his skill set and ear, you know.
Yeah. You pay attention to things.
But you get you to look up from the French fries and go, huh?
Right.
Huh? Yeah. I guess. Wait. What do you hear? Yeah.
Well, I have watched movies with a trauma surgeon, an ER.
Oh, really?
Specialist.
Oh, yeah.
And watched a movie and I'm thinking, that's not how you handle a rifle. Like that's so stupid. It doesn't work that way.
That's how an actor does it.
And she's ignoring that, and you don't get up and walk away from a woman like that. That does not happen.
Right.
We're just talking, focused on completely different aspects of the thing, but seeing these details in different ways. But you mentioned this very, very briefly earlier, but you may have some sort of a record for spending the most time professionally standing on a chair.
Oh gosh, you might be right. I don't know.
This may be something we should look into. You may have a world record in you still.
I wonder if Guinness cares about that one. So what we're talking about is my main keynote is how I went from recreational skier to Olympics in 4 years. Mm-hmm. And after when you speak, you realize what doesn't work, and then you hopefully get better and better and better. Right. And one time I realized that audiences couldn't see me when I was crouched down trying to describe what what it was. So I grabbed a chair that was in this room that I was speaking to of people, an empty chair, put it on where I was, stood on the chair, and said, so when you get in a tight tuck, you're riding a flat ski. And afterwards, people said, it was like I could feel the snow in my hair, and I could feel the wind, and I was there with you when you were on the chair. And I went, seriously? So, and then realized that if I did the chair thing at the very beginning, I'll give you a little speaking tip, if you will. If you say anything from the stage that they've heard before, mm-hmm. or is a cliche, or that they expect, mm-hmm. you are going to be on the path to losing your audience.
Right. You're already headed the wrong direction.
You're already headed in the wrong direction. You're not done yet.
Right.
But if you open by saying, good morning, or what an honor to be here, or what a great looking audience, or thank you, Madam Chairman, for that introduction, right. or anything that they're expecting. So I stood on the chair and I said, you're standing on the side of a 42-degree slope. Mm-hmm. You're going to go 0 to 60 miles an hour in 3 seconds. I'm standing on a chair. Now, these are swivel and on wheels, so I'm not going to do it. I'm smarter than that. But
we can provide you with a chair.
I could. It would be a podcast like no other. But
we should have led with that.
Yeah. And so describing what it feels like to be on top of the chair, sideways to slope, point the skis downhill. Mm-hmm. People just will instantly go, wait, I'll pay attention to this is different, right?
Yep.
Okay, so that's what Jonas is referring to is standing on the chair. Then there's another story about not being able to afford a wind tunnel, but I could afford a friend with a really fast car. So
that's right.
Yeah. Got on top of his car.
I should have mentioned that.
Well, yeah. And the only suit I could afford, as you know by now, was a pink rubber suit. So I'm on top of a car, breaking the law, trying to get aerodynamic principles. I was
going to say, you don't mention that in the...
Not in the brochure, no. Yeah. Anyway, the biggest fear wasn't crashing the car, or popping off the car. It was getting arrested. Because I'm wearing a pink rubber suit, right? Think about it. What's the cop going to do? He's going to say, oh, no, you go ahead and change before we throw you in jail with all your new friends, right? So
yeah, it's going to be tough to explain your way out.
Right, standing in jail in a pink rubber suit.
Although the novelty effect may come into play there as well. Talking about public speaking, or even private speaking, one of the best examples of this I had, and this goes all the way back to high school, but was that when I was a kid, I would because we lived way out in the country and there was absolutely nothing. There's no video games, no internet, so any chance I could get to get away and go do something, camps, whatever.
Right.
The problem was because we didn't just have tons of money, I had to find ways to get that funded.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a different story. But on one of these camps, we have a guy who's going to talk to us about public speaking.
Yeah.
So we're teenagers. We already know this is going to be the most boring thing ever. And the guy comes in and he looks like he's straight from Central Casting for boring professor.
Oh yeah.
He comes in and he's kind of hunched over and he's got a bag with just books are just hanging out of it. And he walks in and he's like takes forever. I mean, we're teenagers, so 30 seconds was a lifetime. But he puts his stuff up here and he's got books and he's got papers and he's rustling the papers and he's fussing with them. And he finally looks at us and he starts talking. And he's talking like this. And we're a bunch of teenagers. We're like, what the blank?
Yeah.
People in the back are already starting to throw paper airplanes. It's not like we're done. And all of a sudden, bam! Out of the blue, he has taken this big honking book that he brought in and thrown it on the floor. And he says, that got your attention.
Yeah.
And then the whole rest of the thing was about if you're going to talk to people, if you're going to get across a concept to people, you're going to have to get their attention. And he did. It was very effective.
Yeah, and you never forgot it.
And I still remember
telling
it to
this story to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
I was at a party not too far from here, actually. It was a friend who, I didn't know his circle of friends. They didn't know me. I attended almost like a favor. Please come to it. Okay, I'll come. So I'm standing in a circle of people. One guy starts telling a story about this skier, this guy who goes from recreational skier to the Olympics in 4 years. And he starts talking about he's on top of the car. And he was telling all these stories, right? And I'm standing there going, well, you're talking about me.
Right.
But I didn't want to interrupt him. And then he went on for, I guess, maybe 10 minutes because he was just, the recall of it was just kind of amazing. And he, at the end, I said, who do you work for? And he says, Abbott Labs. And I went, Abbott Labs? I'm thinking, that was 10 years ago you heard this. And he snapped up and he said, yeah, maybe. Yeah, why? And I said, well, I'm that guy. I was, and he goes, oh, yeah. And it wasn't the subconscious mind recalling a story because I was familiar maybe in the back of his brain. I'm not saying that.
Right.
I'm saying that if you give somebody an experience in your talk, yes, you got to get their attention. I actually use a sequence, eyes, head, heart. Eyes, meaning get their attention, where they're saying, oh, this is different. Head, get inside their head where they go, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way. And then heart, connect you authentically with them. You're not trying to be perfect. You're just being real, and people are drawn to people that are real. And in the context of that sequence of eyes, head, heart, instead of them being the observer of your story, which is what most people do, I did this, then I did this. Okay, how nice for you, says the audience. Right. Where you're standing on the side of a 42-degree slope, you're going to go 0 to 60 miles an hour in 3 seconds. You're up to 125 miles. You put them in an experience. People never forget an experience.
Right.
So if you craft the language in such a way that pulls them into the story, and you can do it with any story. Let's say you told a story about being 5 years old when your mom gave you a quarter and you were sent in to get a chocolate bar. Okay, so one way to say it would be, when I was 5, my mom gave me a quarter and I was told that I could pick out any chocolate bar that I wanted. And I was outside and the door opened and then I walked in. And right there at the cash register were all the chocolate bars.
Right.
And the biggest one was the yellow O. Henry. It just seemed to be the one to get. And it was eye level. I grabbed that O. Henry, and I was so captivated by that, I eventually ended up outside and realized that quarter was still in my pocket.
Ooh.
Okay? So that's a reasonably good story, right? But you were observing that and identifying with it in a way.
Right.
But what if you made it experiential in nature? What if you said, Mom had me open my hand, and as you open your hand and she puts a quarter in it, it takes up your entire palm because you're 5 years old. And she said, put that in your pocket. And standing outside the door, you have to wait until somebody else opens that door because you can't get in on your own.
Right.
And all you can think about is, what chocolate bar are you going to get that Mom said you can pick any one you want?
Right.
You walk in, and at eye level, the biggest one there is O. Henry. And with your little hand, you put your hand, actually it takes 2 hands to hold an O. Henry sometimes, right? And to get outside and then starting to figure out how to open it, I realized the quarter was still in my pocket. You feel that your pocket, you feel that quarter. You also feel that sense of, I did something wrong.
Yeah.
We all have moments where we feel like we get that little tingle, that sense that something needed to be different, right? So same story, but experiential in nature means you just people don't forget an experience, so bring them into that experience. Yeah. for what it's worth.
For what it's worth. But that's great. That's really good. And I just, as you're telling that, I'm realizing I didn't quite do a very good job of that with my last little story there. But
No. Hey, I just did the tree thing to you. The professor said from now on you're going to notice trees.
I noticed all the things I didn't do right.
Right. Oh, God. Yeah. So once you get good at this, once you get good at experiential language, and then you hear another speaker, you're going to go, oh, come on. Come on. Let's not talk about yourself the whole time, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Brian Regan, if you get a chance to see his YouTube clips on, one of them's called the Me Monster.
Yeah.
Me. You know, we do that. It's the human condition. Yep. We step in and we talk about ourselves, but you know, how can we give the audience an experience even more important?
Absolutely. Well, it's been longer than what you promised, and and I appreciate that. Is there anything? The book, The Earthquake, is out now or will be out?
Yeah. So depending on when you're listening to this podcast, the launch date is November 23rd.
Okay.
Of 2021.
Okay. So we'll still be a little ahead of that.
Yeah. Okay.
So
well, you
out
can pre-order it.
Yep.
The Earthquake.
You can pre-order. Yeah.
I personally, and this is not an angle on pitching books or sales, because whatever. What I would do is read The Ant and the Elephant. Mm-hmm. Get that book. Go to my website, vinceposcente.com.
Yeah.
I sell them cheaper than Amazon.
Bezos.
There is a way to do that. The Bezos, not pay for his rocket ship rides. So The Ant and the Elephant, because it's a prequel to The Earthquake.
Right.
And The Earthquake is a very, very different book. Pre-order that, and when it comes in the mail, you've got your Christmas gift all lined up.
That's a good point. Yeah, that'll be just in time.
Mm-hmm.
Outstanding. And I would don't recommend all the time, but those are good.
Yeah,
it made me think, which is great. Again, thanks so much for coming.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate it. And always enjoy our chats, and I hope we can do this again sometime.
Yeah, anytime. Don't be afraid to ask.
All right.
All right. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Thank you.
All the best. All right.